अभी दोबारा स्टार्ट करते हैं। Okay, these I put them in the tray. Es un teléfono, es un teléfono. ¿Qué son todos? Mucho lo van a hacer.
Assalamu alaikum. I think everyone at the back can listen properly. Inna alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Huwa allazi arsala rasulahu bil huda wa dinil haqq liyuzhirahu ala ad-din kulli wa kafa billahi shahida. Inna alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan 'abduhu wa rasuluhu. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu wattaqullaha wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. Ya ayyuhan nas واتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به وأرحم إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, and my dear brothers and sisters, I welcome all of you in this early winter's afternoon in my talk with the Islamic greeting, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace, mercy and blessings of the Creator be on all of you. The topic of this afternoon's talk, as it was announced, the future of Islam. We begin this lecture by praising the Creator Almighty. We ask His help, we seek His forgiveness, and we seek His refuge from the cursed one, the Satan. Verily, whomsoever the Creator guides, there is none who can misguide him. And if the Creator leaves someone astray, then there is none who can guide him towards the truth. I bear witness that there is no one worthy to be worshipped except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty Creator. And I also bear witness that the last and final messenger, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the final messenger sent to all of mankind. May the peace and blessings of the Creator be on his last prophet, his household, his companion, and all the prophets and all the followers of the true religion from Adam, peace be upon him, till the day of resurrection. Dear brothers and sisters, as it is announced, the topic is the future of Islam. It is a talk of time at the present moment. If we see in the international media, every day, if you open the newspaper, if you open the television channels, or we see news articles, as a part of everything, the topics comes around is the topic of Islam. So what the Muslims are doing, how Islam is going, and there is a big issues in the world media about the issues of women's rights, the issues of terrorism and jihad. The other issues are always there. So it's been rising every day in our daily lives. And most of the time, when we see Islam, we find in the international media a negative pictures have been portrayed. People are manipulating things, quoting things out of context, and representing as though that Islam is a religion of violence. It is the most violent religion in the world. And thus the questions arises to many of us, what is the future of this religion? And many of us tend to believe or know that maybe this religion has come into existence 1400 years before in the desert of Arabia, and the founder of this religion was the person, as many of the Orientalists as know, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he was the founder of religion. And it was founded 1400 years before in the desert of Arabia. But the matter of the fact that Islam is the religion of all the prophets, from the first man when he set foot on the earth, till today, till the final revelation come and final prophets come 1400 years before. So it is not something new, and it is not something that is violent, and it is not something that what we hear from the media. So inshallah, in the course of the talk, we will try to see that how Islam is making a future that is just for everyone and that is need for everyone for the future world. The growing number of Muslims around the world, if you see, with all this propaganda is going on, especially after 9/11, we see a virulent propaganda against Islam. Yet, if we see and survey in the world, the people who are accepting religion, and in that terms, Islam is far beyond than all other religion in the face of the earth. So why these people, especially in America, in the West, in the European continents, are coming more and more towards Islam? Or what is their way of thinking? Why they are making these decisions to come closer to Islam? So there is a sensible arguments within itself among the followers of this religion. So before I go into further, I would like to define the subject. What do we mean by Islam? Islam is an Arabic word which comes from the root Arabic word salam. As I greet you all salam in the beginning of the talk, the word salam means peace. And it also comes from the Arabic word silm, which means to submit. So in short definition, Islam means to acquire peace by submitting the will of the individual to the will of the Creator. And we say, Muslim claim, that the will of the Creator is the glorious Quran, whatever the Creator Almighty sent to His last and final messenger, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And this is the revelation that we Muslim claim it addressed to mankind. This is the will of the Creator, and also simultaneously, if we come across an authentic narrations and traditions of the last and final messenger, that is we call Sahih Hadith, the authentic narrations of the Prophet, peace be upon him. These two in combination makes Islam. And if any individual living any part of the universe, not in the globe, any individual or any creation, they submit their will to the will of the Creator, it is defined they are called as a Muslim. So as a Muslim is a person who submits the will to the will of Islam, and the will is defined by the Creator and the Messenger. So the future of Islam, what Islam says about its future, we want to know. What Islam says about its future. So I was quoting and reciting a verse from the Quran. A verse appears no less than 3 times in the Quran. The creator of the heaven and the earth and the creator of this religion, the religion of peace, he himself defined what is the future of the religion. So the verse appears in no less than 3 times. The first times in chapter 9. The name of the chapter is Surah At-Tawbah, and verse 33. And again in Surah 61, Surah Saf, verse 9, it says that Huwa allazi arsala rasulahu bil huda, that it is Allah, the Creator, who sent the messenger bil huda, with a message, the message that the messenger carried. Wa dinul haq, and a religion, a way of life that is truth. Haq. لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ, so that this religion may come and oversee all the other ways of life, all the other religion. وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُشْرِكُونَ. These 2 verses Allah says. The meaning of the interpretations is that never mind how the disbeliever hate this religion. The destiny of this religion, that this religion will conquer and oversee all the other ways of life. Let it be any ism. So that is the destiny. And in another verse of Surah Al-Fath, chapter 48, verse 28, the Creator Almighty says, وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا, that it is Allah, the Creator, is enough, sufficient to prove to the world that He is enough sufficient to make His deen, the destiny of His deen, superior to all other ways of life. So Islam gives a very good message to the followers, and not to the followers, that the destiny of this religion is to oversee and overcome all the other ways of life. Let it be Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, atheism, Jainism, humanism, capitalism, globalism, sectarism, whatever ism, Islam is destined to supersede all the other ways of life. And this is the responsibility of the Creator, that He sees through, that He gonna make His religion oversee all the other ways of life. That is how Islam gives an answer to this question of us, what is the prospect or the future of this religion. And the authentic narrations of the Prophet, peace be upon him, it says in several authentic narrations that the day of resurrection, or the day of doomsday, the end of the world will not come unless Islam reaches every home. So it is now the progress is going on, and we hope, inshallah, by the will of the Creator, Islam will reach the hearts and minds of the people. It will win the hearts and minds of the people, not because what we listen or what we heard from the media, but because of the substance, of the nature, of the values and the principles that Islam contains. And now if we see the Western world, the Quran also makes a claim in the 110th chapter of the Quran, that when we see that the people who listen to the Quran, you will find that the people will enter into Islam in crowd. So especially after 9/11, when we have a big propaganda against Islam, we find that the most people who are living in this western part of the world, they embrace Islam. The statistics is roughly giving us a claim that more than 1.5 million Americans have embraced Islam during the past 10 years of time, after 9/11. And about 500,000 Europeans also accepted Islam. And in most cases, almost 2/3 of the amount that the people who embrace Islam are the sisters. 1/3 are the brothers. So there is a sensible reasons. But what messages the Quran and the Islam gives to the Muslims is followers, that we have a responsibility to carry and to define this message to the people so that they understand this message much more better. It is the responsibility of the Creator to make superior his deen, his religion, but also as a responsible citizen, as a responsible people following a responsible religion, we Muslims have a higher responsibility to carry the message to the others who are not knowing about these messages in Islam. The Creator Almighty, He gives us an instruction in the Quran, in the 16th chapter Surah Nahl. And in verse 125, the Creator says that Udu ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal ma'izati wal hasanati wajadilhum billati ya ahsan. The translation of the meaning is that you Muslims, you invite all the people to the way of thy Lord, your Creator. How? With wisdom, wal ma'izati wal hasana, and beautiful preaching. And the Quran also encourages, and reason with the people and argue with the people. In what manner? In the manner that is most and best manner that has shown by the prophets. Not the manner we heard from the media that it was a religion who was spread by the sword. How can one person submit himself or herself with the use of a force, either a sword or a gun? So it is an individual choice that people make to submit their will to the will of the Creator, to accept Islam. Not the force that was working and that was promoting by the so-called skeptics against Islam. So before I dwell into the subject, I come across a book by the Western scholar. He's a very profound scholar in America by the name of John L. Esposito. He wrote a book, and the book was published in 2010 by the same title, The Future of Islam. So he's a professor of Georgetown University, currently working with the Oxford and the Georgetown University, and he was the advisor of Clinton, the former president of the United States. Clinton was an advisor of Islam. So he wrote a book by the same title, The Future of Islam. And when we go through the books, there are various examples and interpretation that he took from the principles and from the tradition of Islam, and he was trying to explain to the audiences, his audience, especially the Americans and the Europeans, because he took most of the examples from the examples of these continents. And there was a big survey went on in the Gallup poll. If you just Google it, one of the biggest poll and big survey done by the experts about how the Muslims in the world, they did a survey about more than 60 Muslim countries and more than 100 countries in the world, including Muslims and the non-Muslim countries, to summarize some articles and their researches that how the people think and how the Muslims think about the questions that they make in the surveys. And the book is entitled fully about informations, what we found, that it's a very profound book. Though as a Muslims, when we read the book to see the reviews and the other examples, I amazed that how a non-Muslim scholar can write such a book, because it is entitled to what is our thinking and our values and what is our conscience. So he tried to portray these messages in his book, very scholarly books, and though as a normal Muslims, he can be confused sometimes, because when it comes to the issues of women's rights, issue of apostasy, issue of human rights, especially when it defines in the book, and he calls for reform, Islamic Muslim reformer, and the other issues that are very complex. So these are scholarly views, and we have to see these examples. I encourage the Muslims especially, and also the non-Muslims who think to know about Islam from these scholars. There are various other scholars. In Great Britain, there are scholars like Karen Armstrong. She is also a very profound scholar, and she wrote a couple of books. One of the books is Islam, the Story, a short story, and that book was published in 2010. So Karen Armstrong, she is also a very profound British scholar. She was a non-Catholic nun, and then after that she left the professions, and now she is a leading scholar in terms of religion in the West. One of the things that I found from the John Esposito book, I would like to just give a very brief, in short, so that it may help us to understand what's the result or outcome from this research. And this book's also a mirror for the Westerners and the Americans to see that where the problem lies. Are the problems is with ourselves to understand Islam? Are the problems is among ourselves when we define the foreign policy of America and foreign policy of Europe? And how we understand Islam when it comes to the practice of the Muslims? Because there are a vast number of Muslims living in America, approximately 7 million. And there are about more than 50 million Muslims are living in the European Union border. So how we are evaluating these Muslims? Are we putting our emphasis to know what's the psychology or the mentality of the Muslims going on in this region of the world? So John Esposito, you can search it, he's a very profound scholar, he summarized in his book, and he profoundly mentioned in the conclusion, I'd just like to mention the conclusion before I try to touch the other points, that the future is for Islam. And the future of Islam because it is the future of humanity. So Islam preaches humanity when we analyze and understand the views, the reasons, and the practices, the principles, the values that are prescribed in Islam. Because that is the Creator who sent this religion to establish peace. The ultimate goal of Islam is to acquire peace, individually and then society, and in the level of the global. So in the global context, it is a religion of humanity. We define the religion of peace, the religion of humanity. And he reasonably and sensibly quoted these things that when these issues come to in the media, if you go back to past 60, 70 years, Islam was not at that much level in the media. At that point, Islam was second or third largest religion in the West also. But yet, it was not coming in the media that much as we see now. The reason is the media, and the reason as he prescribed with the scholarly views that it is because of the foreign policy of the European and the American context that we want these things to be in the media so that we can dominate with our policy to these people who follow the religion of peace. Now the survey reports from the Gallup poll, it comes that when they ask the Americans that how much they know about Islam, 57 to 60% of people, they say we don't have any knowledge about Islam. And some of them goes on to say 70 to 75% said yes, we want to know. So in the last month, American government, Barack Obama, their administrations, they prescribed and they encourage the Muslims community to invite more and more non-Muslims to define Islam. So there is a concept going on in the American and the European people that Muslims people don't like to accept criticism. They don't like to accept questions and queries on Islam. But now, after 10 years, they tried so much, America, to demolish the views of the Muslims and Islam. But when they see the impact is going other side, so the administration changed their policy. That now we cannot go in confrontation with the Muslims. Because we cannot go in confrontation with our people. It is American and the European who are accepting Islam. Not that immigrants or the Muslims who are coming, they are only the Muslims. It is the society who are accepting Islam. So the poll survey, it comes that majority of the people now in America, they want to know. In Europe, they want to know what is the text and the context in Islam. And then it comes through in many other issues where Esposito was discovering in his book some of this very, very good information for the Muslims. Because maybe as a scholarly view, because this battle to define Islam in the media or with the public, it is just a matter now for the intellectual. It is not a general level. Because the Muslims coming in different part of the world, most of the time the media, they ask them the questions to define Islam. And that becomes a very big resistance. Because the Muslims coming from the country where there was war for the last 50, 60 years or 10 years, and that they have an emotional response towards the policy of the America or the Europe. So on that point, if we ask Muslims to answer such questions, the questions would be not something that is in the religion. So Esposito, he was encouraging the Western scholars, because there are other scholars who virulently they criticize Islam. They find only the wrong informations from a wrong practice of particular society. And the survey shows that that is not the result what it itself. Because when it goes to the Arab worlds, they made a survey in the Arab worlds, that how the Arab world see the policy say, of the Westerns, how they see the Arab world, the Muslims especially, more than 60 countries in the world, how they see these values of human rights, this value of women's rights. And more than 73 to 89% of the Arabs, they appreciate the system of the West. Because we know as Muslims, these are the values and the principles of Islam. When it comes to women's rights, sharing the liberty of freedom of speech as a constitutional right of the Muslim. But because of the circumstances that we are living in different parts of the Muslim world, we are not able to access this freedom. Because there is a political issues is going on around that. And that political issues also by the survey comes, and also we know the matter of the fact, it is because of the foreign policy of the most powerful countries in the world. They want to dominate us by making their selective people in the power. So now they are dominating the Muslim countries. And the survey reports also tells us that, look, when it comes to Iran, when it comes to Saudi Arabia, the most complex countries that we see and we know from the media, how their Muslims think about these issues. And the survey also comes very good information that most of the universities are in Saudi Arabia and in Iran. They employ the females when it comes to executive level, in the professional level, working in the same environments. The women are mostly working there in compared to men. Not that in the European context we have the liberty of women, but within the disciplinary views of Islam, within the discipline, the women are working on their circumstances and a very complex situations that the women are living on that part of the world, yet they are taking this liberty and they are accessing this power. But it does not come in the media because the media is very selective. When they put some information, they're very selective. Which information will be fishy for the people to grasp. So, in context of American context, Esposito and his research assistant on the Gallup poll, they found that in America and in the European context, it is very diverse. People don't see the diversity within the Muslims community. And there are more than 70 ethnic groups, Muslim groups in America and in Europe. 70 different nationalities people are here. So when it comes to asking Muslims how they feel and they realize about the Islamic point of views, especially when it comes to Sharia, the Islamic laws and jurisprudence, the people think that, look, this is the most difficult and most rude ways of judiciary system. The survey, it comes that 93 to 96% of people, they found themselves that the discipline, the well-balanced Sharia, what we call Islamic laws, that is what they want within the Muslims world. So that is the democratic views, what the Muslims want themselves. They want to see that the Sharia is playing a major role in their life. Because that is a personal choice. Sharia is a personal choice whether we like to accept it or not. But not the democratic views that we see in the world. The democratic philosophy that we see in the world. When it comes to the issues banning hijab in France, when it comes to the issue of criticizing Islam, making cartoons in the different part of the world, how the Muslims see, the survey reports comes that Muslims don't hate them at that much, or don't see at these issues at that much when they comes to see the British and the Americans on the other extent, to see their foreign policy level. 60 years now, more than 60 years, Palestine is hammering by the Zionists. So what is the solutions to this problem for the last 60 years that these Western worlds who are promoting human rights, rights of equality and justice, how they are seeing these views? And when we Muslims don't get any results from these views, how we emotionally react to the policy of the West. So 34% people, they criticize the policy of the France, but more than 80% to 90% people, they criticize the foreign policy of the British and America. And this is the matter of the fact that we have to understand what is the messages that we are taking from this context. and the aggressions of the United States and their foreign policy, most of the Muslims country, and within this survey, the non-Muslims even living in this part of the world, they also claim that yes, we also suffer from this war on terror. It is war on peace, not the war on terror. The selective informations, misinformations about when it comes to the informations of weapons of mass destructions, the manipulating the official documents, and how it went through in Iraq and Afghanistan. So the complex picture John Esposito trying to portray, what messages we are finding now after 10 years. We want to give freedom to a couple of peoples. We want to get release out of fear the other people from weapons of mass destruction. So how these things are now reflecting within the Muslims community. And when it comes to sharing principles and others, see how the Western world react with the Muslims. When it comes to the food, the food or spicy food of the Muslims, they very much reluctantly welcome. When it comes to finance and money and investment, the Western policy is that welcome the Muslims, welcome their money, welcome their food. But when it comes to cultural dresses, the norms and values of the Muslims, then you're not welcome. So the issues become about social coherence, about the transparency is going on in the Muslim world, but the West does not see this information on that much. So social integration is becoming a major issue now in the Western world. That we have about 50 to 70 million in the West. But now how to resolve this problem of the cultural diversity, of civilizations that people see that far more behind from this modern culture. So how to resolve this problem? Because that is a very complex issue that we have to understand within the society itself. Because we have Muslims, European Muslims now, they are no longer immigrant Muslims. They are the European Muslims. Because the Europe is very diverse. So within the diversity in our thoughts and beliefs, how we can balance and live a life in peace and harmony. That was the main agenda of this research. And the findings are really that it gives us a message when it comes to the laws, the ideal laws and views of Islam. People see, especially the experts, that there is a sensible reason behind. Because the Western world who claims about many issues like giving women rights, but when it comes to the pornographic movies, the porn industries, when it comes to sexual advertisement in the media, nobody raises issues. Because that is a sensible issue. No Muslim country in the world have ever dared to devalue the women in such an extent. But it is the Western part of the world who are devaluing the women, using them like a goods or products. So he wrote very good remarks that the Muslim women is no longer very cheap like a goods that you buy in the Western world. So there is a sensible message for the Muslims and for the Westerners also to think that what is the message is in there. So these sophisticated issues, John Esposito and the Golub Datta, they try to find out a very sensible meanings from that. And when we come to see and consider the Islamic views, Islam is very clear. Its message is very clear. We, as the human level, we have to interpret and see within the context when it comes to Islamic legislations, the laws, the discipline. We say it's a deen, it's not a religion itself. Deen, we define that it is a complete way of life. Whatever we do in daily actions, it has a clear guidelines in the house of Islam. So the economic issues, the education, the political, the judiciary systems, the social systems, the educational systems, the technological systems, it is prescribed in the religion itself. So we Muslims understand the religion as a complete way of life. Whatever we do, whatever actions we make, we have a clear guidelines and we have a clear destiny. That's how we see, and that's how we portray the messages to the others. They see there is a significance of understanding the values and principles of Islam. Maybe it benefits the others. So, as I say, he concluded in his research the future of Islam, the future of humanity, and the future of Islam is that it will be an immense power which will win the hearts and minds of the people. Because the more we heard misinformations, the more we do research, and the more we find the truth. So that is what is the findings of these surveys. And when it comes to the issues of the Western Muslims within the Western community, he gives a sensible meanings that now when it comes to social integrations, they do not portray these messages like this. That you Muslims, most of the time, media people, they ask them that are you a Western Muslims, or are you an American, or are you a Muslim? Which one you choose first? And the Muslims who comes with a certain background, they have an emotional responses. When they give answer, we are Muslims, so then it becomes that you are a racist, you don't like America. You know, the patriotism or loyal to your country. So the media is very selective. But now we Muslims, we have to educate the Muslims community. And when it comes to these kind of issues, that are you a Muslim first, or are you a European first, are you a Swedish first, or American first? We have to answer, look, by profession we are an engineer, or we are a doctor, we are a lawyer. By nationalities, we are in this region. By culture, we are European culture. By religion, either we are a Christian, we are a Muslim, we are a Hindu. So that is different identity. Do not mix with these things. We have to educate the Muslims when it comes to portraying this message to the media. We have to be very selective that who we are talking, because the media people, they are very fishy. So we have several identity, and that is not un-Islamic. Many fanatics will say that is un-Islamic. If you are a Muslim, you cannot be an European. No, most of the things, or the laws and the discipline, the principles within the European borders and within the discipline of America, it is the origin of Islam. We say this is our values. Maybe we lost these values in the continent that we lived, but that is a political surroundings. We have past colonizations by the British. There's a long period of colonizations, and now still we are suffering because of the corruption, because of the poverty. Not that what we heard from the media, that the Islamic world does not have anything before. That was the golden period of the Muslims during the time of 6th century to 12th century. Then after 15th century, we have changed. The world has changed to a context of the others. So now people are realizing and going back that yes, there is a sensible reason. If we hammer and conquer someone's land, trying to dictate our policy to some regions, then how we can expect from them the same kind of understanding and values like we have. So there is a sensible reasons. And now we Muslims have to portray these things to the Muslims and to the non-Muslims. We define that Islam has solutions to all the problems of mankind. If we just selectively count the problems of the world today, whatever the problems we have in the world, we Muslims claim that come with the issues and the problems, and bring the experts from your sides, and let's bring the experts from the Muslims to find a solutions to this problem, and we will see that look, the solutions that we provide in terms of the problems, it is far more superior than the solutions that you are playing with for many years. No solutions we are finding. When it comes to the problems of the social issues, the demolition of the house, the social issues of alcohol, now is a problem becoming HIV, the problems of this porn culture, the problems of becoming so-called values that we are portraying, of obscenity. This is not the values that we humans have before. Because culturally or regionally, we have our own values, the human, not as the religious views. But when it comes to long issues of these social customs and values, we see there is a very big diversity in the recent years. It is due to the impact of the media. So now what is the solutions to all these problems? Are these armchair experts, those who are sitting, naming themselves to be an expert on the field, writing books from Oxford or from Harvard University, telling us what to do and what not to do? So are their philosophies is making any sense of giving any results to the society that we live? No, the problem is increasing. Because the statistics, the figures is very clear in the Western world. Because they have a very sophisticated way of taking information. So we find within the society itself very complex problems. The youths are dying. Every part of the world, the European Health Report, it comes to most of the European youths, they are suffering because of this drugs industry. So now how these social problems can be solved? So there is a growing need of solutions. So we as an Islamic point of view, proclaiming that look, we have a solutions. Just you have to change your psychology, your way of thinking, of seeing Islam as a religion or Islam as a practical solution of life. When it comes to political issues, so how we see these problems. You know, Gandhi was writing his collective works in India. So one of the principles that Gandhi was telling that look, this policy, the politics, the 7 principles that demolish the human views, the human lives, and out of 7 views that he portrayed, the 7 things, the 7 lessons, what Gandhi says. One of the things is that politics without principles. We have in the world today the politicians, especially, they are making the politics, and without principles, no policy can survive. So now we are seeing in the world today how the politicians are playing with the life of the human, and now the most suffering are the general people, the innocent people who don't have the power on ability to change the society or the custom. So we need principles. And see, when it comes to Islam, we see Islam is based on principles. It has a value, a long run and a short run benefits everyone can see by practicing these values. And see the society problems. Now this is a very big problem in the Western world. 2,300 abortion is taking place every day in the western part of the world. The Council of Europe was vasting this report last year. Look how many abortions took place in the European region. In America, how much? 1.37 million of abortions every year. How can we accept that level of killing? Because we are telling this is abortion. But marriage or child without wedlock, relations without marriages. There are millions of sisters who are in the western part of the world, especially in England. They want to become pregnant, but they don't find a husband or a male to give them the production. And this is a problem within the region itself. China is suffering because of one-child policy. 25 million more male than female. So how to solve this problem? Economic issues. The world is suffering mostly with this economic, because this is the agenda that world is proposing. Every country should have a vibrant economic policy. So to vibrant the economy, and what they say, the vibrant economy, now how the world is shaking, and the world is suffering as an economic crisis. So we say, look, before you solve the problem of economic crisis, we have a higher responsibility to solve the problem of moral crisis. Because without moral values, how you solve the problems of other values? So there is a Harvard professor by the name of Daniel Bell. He's a professor of sociology. He did a very thorough research and he wrote a book. And he claimed about these terms of policy or the economic policy that we have in the world today. He makes a very good remark that this is a self-destructive economic policy that we have in the world. So the book is The Cultural Contradiction of Capitalism. And he went through and he says that the Western world or the economic policy should re-adopt the policy from the religion. That is the expert's views, because he was not trying to make people as a religious point of view, but try to see the policy behind. Because religion, it gives you a very norms and values and principles. So he says that we must re-adopt the values of religion, even if one had to invent a new religion and to propose to re-establish these policies. So we are claiming that, look, we have a pure economic policy in Islam. We know the interest-free economy. We call it riba, interest or usury. And the economic policy is more vibrant than the economic policy of the world today. It's a profit and loss sharing. An economy that establishes peace and justice within the arena. It does not value a person based on money. It evaluates a person based on his intellectual that he had. Because the money is from the community itself, and the intellect, it is the community itself. So it shares the profit and loss within the society. There is no economic policy in Islam which will propagate anything that is that will demolish the society in the short and long run. We don't have that principle in Islam. We have a pure guidelines of economic policy. And the European Economic Council, they have in the last economic meeting and the summit, they have adopted that we must adopt this interest-free economic system. And where you find interest-free economic system except in the house of Islam? So people are now coming toward Islam because they have suffered and practiced other ways and other ways of thinking for a long time and no solutions. If we see in the past history of mankind, the society, they collapse. More powerful society we see in Egypt, we see in Greek, we see in Rome. How they collapse eventually? Because the society, when they have the excess of wealth, they lost the philosophy of moral values, the ethics, the principles, and immediately they collapse. So we say, look, economic recession is necessary, but before that, the moral recession is much more important than the economic recessions. Because the people who run the economy, they should be morally re-establish their principles. So as the Gandhi says, the economy, the wealth, it should be based on work. So if the wealth comes through without any work, then these principles of this economy will not continue in the long run. An American diplomat by the name of William Offals, he also makes some sort of research, because American and the European have a good habit of writing books as a way of philosophers. So in his writing, The Requiem of Modern Politics and the Tragedy of the Enlightenment and the Challenges of the New Millennium, he wrote this book in 1997, and he predicted the collapse of this system in the more than a decade ago, so 13 years, 14 years ago. And he makes a very good remarks at the end of the conclusions, that no human civilization can ever survive without the principle of spirituality. So why we want a spiritual power? Because that is the missing in the modern world today, so-called modern world. So as an ex-diplomat, American diplomat, he has to make concrete that we have to revive this view of spirituality that is missing in the hearts and minds of the people. So my dear brothers and sisters, if we just analyze these views, social problem, economic problem, educational problem, we have in the scientific world today, the scientific research today, they are doing vast amount of research, but the knowledge that we are seeing today is without character. Without character. The basic principle of Islam is the fundamental of the character. The scientific research today, we find the scholars are doing research on dogs. You know, are these dogs is feeling its environment? No, it is healthy. The dogs, it has feelings, whether he is happy or not. And we see 2.1 billion people in the world today is suffering of extreme poverty. So the consciousness is in the mind of this so-called expert who are doing research without a character, where we are spending money, millions and billions of dollars or millions of billions of currency to find out how the animal feels. And when we have humans before us, because we are the people in the Western region, we propound this diversity of human rights, the value of humans. But when it comes to the practice, it differs from what they are saying. So this is what is now we have to understand. In the political world, there is very big hypocrisy is going on. When we say democracy, the terms when we define democracy, how we understand democracy as a principle. See which democracy we should want, American or the European or the Asian or the British democracy. There are 192 countries in the world today. In the United Nations last year, when they sit for a meeting, UN, they pass every year 186 countries. If they vote for one side, if one of the member of 5 permanent member of Security Council, they vote against it, the 186 vote nullifies. Is it called democracy or is it hypocrisy? So democracy is nowadays have to be assigned by the Washington DC. And that is what we say Muslims in the political field, that this is not a policy that we can adopt, because this is something which if within the practice and within the definition is contradictory, because you are not giving your values when 161 countries and 164 countries in the world every year, UN resolutions, when they make in terms of the issues of peace process of Palestinian and Israeli conflict, we find that the democracy is very simple for the last 60 years. But what is the result that we are getting from this kind of democracy? So we have to think rationally. The principle of Islam is justice. The politics is based on justice. Because without peace, no society can survive, can make these technological resources. In the last 400 years in Sweden, if it does not make any wars with its neighbors or the other countries, if it have these wars, or if it is colonized by this American or by the British, we would not see these resources that are going on in the field of in the field of educational achievements that this country had. So we have to see whether what is going on in the other part of the world. So we are asking the same values and the same principles that what is portrayed by the European Union or by the American. And in terms of the other issues, when it comes to judicial system, we see, look, we have a very pure guidelines in terms of judicial system. Maybe it does not appear to you as a good ways when it comes to many issues. John Esposito also writes about some issues when it comes to theft, how the punishment of theft, adultery, how we treat adultery. But he gives a sensible reason. Says, see, when it comes to the judiciary system of the West, we are seeing that problem is increasing because of so much liberty. We give criminals so much justice than the victims. 15 years of girl in Sweden, she committed suicide after she knowing she was in the court corridor, and she was seeing her rapist, and she was informed by the lawyer that he will going to be punished for 2 or 3 years for the rape that he has committed. So the girl, she asked for justice and she committed suicide. If we ask her that what punishment you want for the rapist, I would surely claim that she would surely ask that give the capital punishment to my rapist as the victims. But we are giving so much importance to the culprit or the criminals. And when it comes to a very rude punishment, we say punishment is very rude. But if the incident happened to our life, we immediately react, no, we want this. But we devalue the other people, the emotions or the reasons of other people when it comes to the claim of the Muslims. Especially we are talking with the Muslims. When the Muslims say, look, we want these laws for your benefit, for our benefit, but we say, look, this is very rude and this is not belongs to our cultural practice. So, my dear brothers, we have to see these values and principles of Islam. The virtues of Islam, how it teaches, it follows. It is always a submission of ourselves. We pray together. We fast for a whole month. We give charity in a continuous basis, not for the sake of for fame of something. We do every actions for the sake of Islam. So this is what we Muslims have to portray. And if I would just give some of the statistics of the present world in the world, that if we see what is going on in the world today, Edward Said, professor of Columbia University, very profound scholar, he passed away a few years before. And the Columbia University in 1979, he wrote, published an article in the Time magazine. And he gives a very profound figure that by the span of 150 years, from 1800 to 1950, there are about 60,000 books have been written against Islam and against the Prophet of Islam. And he summarized that these are the Western Orientalists, because he wrote a book by the title of Orientalism. And in this book, there's Western Orientalists, how they portray the wrong messages about Islam and the Muslims. The things they invent which is not in the religion, not in the traditional practices of the religion itself. And within all this propaganda that we see, 60,000 books, and after 9/11, every day we have more than 2-3 books, and it is a marginal survey have done. The more than 3 books have been written against Islam and against Muslims every day after 9/11. With all this, we find another picture in the Western world. People are coming into Islam in crowds. In UK, the BBC and NBC, this is about 50,000 Muslims, almost 50,000 Muslims every year, roughly. In Germany last year, more than 4,000 people who embraced Islam. In Sweden, we don't have the records, but I would like to quote the annual publications of Uppsala University. Mattis Gadrell, he is the professor of religion and multiculturalism in Europe. Sultan Meledin Silvik, she was doing her PhD, and her thesis paper, she interviewed 50 women in Uppsala. And all of these 50 women, they are Swedish origin, not the immigrant origin. They embraced Islam after doing a thorough research on Islam, and they took the veil. And they proclaimed to the others that, look, what we see and what we know, that Islam devalued the women, it is the opposite. So the 50 women, the sisters in Uppsala, on the year 2007, if you just go back to for the records, in their yearly book 2007, page 27, the subject was History and Multiculturalism in Europe, and Islam in Europe. So Sultan Meredin Silvik, she wrote very good information on there. And her thesis paper is also, a short information is there that what we see Islam is not the reality, what is in the practice, or what we understand. And just go back to America and others. Last 10 years, more than 1.5 million, the Americans, they embrace Islam. These are original American, not the Afro-American, what they say, or the immigrant American. These are the American people. And in Europe, it is predicted that within a few years, 2030, because there is a very serious problem within the European world. So one of the imam of Norwegian mosque, he was giving statistics, a figure, that look, every Western women, they took 1.4 children in average. And every Muslim women, they took 3.5 children in average. So by ratio, Islam is increasing. So it will come eventually within a few decades that Islam will be within the numbers, in terms of numbers, in the European region. So now how we can cooperate with these groups? They are the minority today. The maximum Muslims are in France, about 5 to 7 million, and then in Sweden about 500,000. And the other part of the Europe, in Germany, in Belgium and others, we have a very big amount of Muslims. So if the Turkey would enter the European Union, eventually it will have 20 to 25% Muslims population in this region, in this border of Europe. And in America it is already more than 7 million. So now the Western scholars, we have to understand, those who are the Western scholars, they're propounding that we have to live with them. So the best is to understand them and to have a common agenda in between. Not to see some people and devalue some people, but to understand and respect each other's views. Because when we respect, we get respect in return. So the Reader's Digest, one of the most reading journals in the world today, it published a report in 1986 in their yearly book Almanac, and they give a very profound statistics of the world that by the span of 50 years, 1934 to 1984, the people who accept some religion, the growing religion in the world, they say, according to their survey, 235% increased population in the Muslims world. And Christianity, when it comes to the people accepting faith, is only 47%. So within the survey itself and the statistics of the world, we see these growing numbers of people who are coming towards spirituality, to humble themselves and to submit themselves to acquire peace in this life. And what the experts say about the future of Islam. We just want to see some of the experts. We know George Bernard Shaw is one of the philosophers and very good playwrights in the Western region. So in 1936, he wrote a couple of volumes in Islam, The Genuine Islam. He wrote the title of his book, The Genuine Islam. In the last volume, he says that, look, if any religion have a high chance to conquer England, and in comma he says, nay, in Europe, over next century, it is Islam. In The Genuine Islam, George Bernard Shaw predicted about a century ago. So it is the religion that has a high chance to conquer over Europe and England. And then he goes on to say that whatever I have the perceptions on this religion of Islam and this man of the Prophet of Islam is very high, is very supreme. Because Islam itself has carrying a value for civilizations, to build up a civilizations. And he goes on to say in his last volume that if any man, if we are to assume as a Britisher, he was telling to the British, that if we are to assume to be given the dictatorship of this modern world to a man like Muhammad, peace be upon him, he would immediately would be able to achieve the peace and happiness of the society, which is much more needed in the present world. So this is what George Bernard Shaw he predicted in 1936. And we appeal to the people that see the experts what they are telling. And there is a Dutch anthropologist, and he's a writer and a scholar. They also wrote very good, profound information. He was telling about the doctrine and the principle of Islam. So they see the doctrine and the principle of Islam, how it builds a brotherhood. No matter you find a Muslim in any part of the world, immediately he will recognize other Muslims or other human as a brother. That is the principle, the doctrine of Islam. We valued human as a brotherhood of humanity. So Karen Armstrong, as I was telling, a British author, she has also written a couple of books, very good biography. That I would say that whatever my information goes about the biography he has written about our Prophet, many Muslims, experts, would have failed to write such an scholarly books as from our point of view. Very good, profound information you will find in the book. And recently she has written another book, A History of Islam. So she said that Islam is able, to overcome the fanatism and the criticism of the Western people by its own way. So Islam has its own way of accepting criticism and to overcome criticism of the people. Maybe we Muslims don't have this scholarly intellect to refute these things, but Islam itself has this. Because she went through the religious scriptures and thoroughly studied this. And she found that, look, what we claim to be as a Western expert and see the religion how it is not the things what Islam is. It has its own way. When she has studied the Quran for many times, as she has written in her book, that I have found the information what I was missing for a long time. And they understand Islam based on the text and the context and the practice of the people, not by what the other people says. We have John Esposito, as I was mentioning. We have Tariq Ramadan as one of the profound scholars in the Switzerland. And he was banned to enter America by the Bush administration for a long time. But now the Obama administration has withdrawn the ban, and Tariq Ramadan is now working in Oxford University. And as I was telling about Mahatma Gandhi, he wrote a couple of good books and very good information. And in 1924, he was writing a book about Islam. And he says, look, that the sayings of Muhammad, peace be upon him, the last and final messenger, he has thoroughly studied this. He said that the sayings of Muhammad is not only for the Muslims itself, but for the whole of mankind. In his collective work of Mahatma Gandhi. We have Western scholars like Hamza Yusuf running Zaytuna Institute in the America, and they all are seeing now, there are hundreds and thousands of Western scholars. There are hundreds and thousands of theologians who are seeing Islam as a point of view so that it carries and gives some instructions to the Western people to understand these values and principles of Islam. What we lost today is the spirituality. So we try to go back to spirituality by understanding it. And Deleuze O'Leary, one of the historians the past time, she wrote a good book about Islam. She said, Islam at the Crossroad. So in the page 8, she was refuting these allegations of the Western scholars that you see, you are now being afraid of Muslims coming from another part of the world and conquering your land with the use of a sword. So she refuted these views by telling in her book in the page 8, she said that history makes it clear that the fanatical Muslims sweeping across the world, they're forcing Islam at the point of the sword, is the most fantastic absurd myth that the historian have ever repeated. This is Deleuze O'Leary. And this is what we have to find, why people are accepting Islam. And not because his sword, his war is going on, forcing someone to accept. No, we have This is the sort of the intellect that is going on in the world today. So another person in London, W. Montgomery Watt, it's very difficult to pronounce his name, he uses some Swedish name. We have very common names like Gustafsson, Peterson and Anderson, but we're not familiar with such very big names. But he wrote a very good things on his book, Islam and Christianity Today. He was an Anglican Christian. He said, I'm not a Muslim in the usual cases. He is not a Muslim in the usual cases, though I hope to be a Muslim, if the Muslim means to surrender to God, to submit to God's will. But I believe that the embedded, given in the Quran and other expressions of the Islamic vision are vast store of divine guidelines, from which I and my colleagues and many of us have many things to take from, to learn from. And Islam is certainly a strong contender for supplying the basic frameworks of the one religion of the future. This is what he says, that Islam has a substance which will provide the basic frameworks for the way of life for future. So that is the future of Islam. And in the conclusion of my talk, I would like to make a very good strong appeal to my brothers and sisters here. As a Muslims, what we can do, as I said earlier, we have to arm ourselves, educate ourselves. We have a very wide and very bright past, golden period of the Muslims. So now we have to go back to our roots, what is missing in the Muslim part. For the non-Muslims part, we are telling to the others that take the Muslims as a friendly, understand what is there. Take them in an environment so that you can understand their principles, their ideology and their thinking, so that we can live in a very peace and harmony in the society. And this is what we need. For the Muslims, we have a higher responsibility to carry and to define this message to the others. The Creator says, فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرٌ. It is our duty to proclaim the message to others, to give an understanding of the message of Islam. That is what we call dawah, the propagation of Islam. Every Muslim, every individual should carry these messages so that we can deliver this message of peace to others so that they can understand. And we at the same time can rectify our mistakes, because we have so many mistakes within the Muslim community itself. And we have to understand that we are far behind from our religion. If we are good Muslims today, we will see the problems and the pointing fingers to the Muslims community would solve. Because we have to be better Muslims as an exemplary Muslim to the others in order to solve this rising problem of the world. My dear brothers and sisters, so this is the end of my talk. I would like to encourage all of you that the future of Islam is very clear, that it will exist, and it is proved from the history that it is indestructible. No force, because we are not the creator of Islam. The creator of the heaven and the earth, he created Islam. He gives us conscience, he gives us intellect to understand. When we suffer, we submit to God. So our humble request to the humanity, that before we suffer, we should try to think that how can we achieve peace if we have to submit. Because through the submissions, we achieve peace. By practicing laws of a country or a system or an organization, we achieve discipline. So Islam teaches us everything. Discipline, you have something to achieve from the disciplines. And that is the achievement of peace, inner peace, outer peace. Peace in yourself, peace in the community. So I would like to end the talk by the quotation of the Quran from Surah Al-Hujurat, chapter 49, verse 13, when the Creator says that, Ya ayyuhan nasu, that, O mankind, inna khalaqnakum, that I have created you, min zakari wa unsa wa ja'alnakum, and I have splitted you and divided you into nations and tribes. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum innallaha alimun qadir. And I have divided you into nations and tribes, not that you shall despite and fight with each other, but to understand each other. And the most honorable in the sight of the Creator among the mankind is the one who fear God and obey God's laws and principles most. So this is our humble request, everyone, that we must increase our piety and righteousness to submit to the will of the Creator. There is an announcement. We have some guests, so we have 15 minutes break. After the break, we will have question and answer session, inshallah. So you can, by this time, the sisters and the brothers, they have a couple of questions there from Gutenberg University, doing some research. So you're most welcome within the break to ask or whatever you like to do in this. And after that 15 minutes, we will have the open question and answer. So I would also encourage you, if you have some questions, what I talk or what you think, or any criticism, inshallah, we would like to entertain you. Jazakallah khair.
নাস্তা করেন